Welcome to this episode of Author Success Show. The special guest we have today is Debbie Rosemont. Debbie is a productivity consultant and she started her company, Simply Placed, almost 20 years ago to help busy professionals who feel overwhelmed and overloaded by all that they need to do. She loves helping clients implement strategies to work smarter, not harder, through her group It's About Time virtual productivity program and her highly customized individual 6 month productivity transformation package. She is the author of the book Six Word Lessons to Be More Productive and the co author of One Habit for a Thriving Home Office. She's a wife, mom, sister, friend, volunteer, business owner, dog lover, and travel addict. She recently returned from 6 weeks of living and working in Spain and can't wait for her next adventure. Hi, Debbie. Welcome to Author Success Show.
Thank you. I'm so pleased to be here.
I was so excited to bring you on this show because usually the common notion is that it takes like 3 years to write a book and another couple of years to publish it. But both the books that you have been a part of are books that don't look difficult. They are easy to read as well. So I thought, it's really important to understand how your process was. But before all of that, let's talk about how did you ever have this idea of writing a book while you were running your business, Debbie?
I really didn't. I love the work that I do. I love client service, and I have enjoyed building a business over the last 20 years. But before I wrote the first book, which was in 2009, so I was only 6 years in business then.
Right.
I did not. It was not a lifelong goal to publish a book. It really wasn't something I had thought about.
Right. So running a business for 20 years is no joke, especially in today's times where everything is so changing all the time. So can you tell us what made you continue running your businesses in spite of all the ups and downs you must have surely faced in the last 20 years?
Yeah, it's true. It has been, never a straight path, right? And like you said, I change is constant. And I think for me, I never really feared change, and I try to see good in change that happens and work with it rather than against it. And then, build on experience and lessons learned when things don't go the way you think they will. So I think those have been some keys to staying in business for 20
Yeah.
years is trying to be flexible and innovate at the right time with the right offerings. And to continue to do business in a way that has felt good. So that's a part of it too, is, things have evolved as far as how I've defined business success with where I'm at various stages in my life. Because when you do business over a
Yeah,
couple of decades, own a company, life changes, right? When I started
absolutely.
my business, my kids were very little. And as part of why I started my own company was to have flexibility in my schedule and be the mom I wanted to be. And they're now grown and out of the house, so they certainly saw a lot of change, and
Yeah.
my life is different now than when I started the company.
Sure. So now you are this super successful productivity coach. Did you start off as a productivity coach or was your business into something else in the beginning?
So my corporate background was in human resources, and part of my role there was to look at for a big company that I worked with, look at how to leverage people in business, right? How people could be the asset that they are for this company, and that included recruiting and onboarding and training, and then helping people develop. And so taking that as kind of the first glimpse into productivity that I had in the corporate world into my own business. When I started the business, I started as a professional organizer. So I was helping people primarily organize their space as a productivity strategy. So
Wow.
I found a lot of people were wasting time looking for things that they knew they had but couldn't find. They were frustrated with clutter. Their spaces weren't conducive to reaching the goals that they had. So when we organized the space, they became more productive. And as I continued to do the physical organizing, of course, I was talking to people about time management and how they would organize their time, their schedule, their tasks and to-dos. And that's really then where the business evolved, was a focus on those things.
Right. I love how your business has evolved over time, but as you said, with the changing phases of your life too. So you said that six
Yes.
years into your business is when you wrote your first book. So did
Mm-hmm.
somebody ask you, did a client tell you that you should be writing a book, or how did that idea happen?
One of the ways my business grew over the years was through networking, through
Hmm.
so making connections and helping other people make connections. But one of the networking connections that I had was somebody who had a small publishing company and was starting a series and thought that my content might be conducive to this book series. So she did ask. It was a couple that were involved, and they asked and said, hey, what would you think about doing a book? Here's what would be involved. And what I loved about that is that it was really following a formula, which,
Hmm.
you asked, had you ever thought about writing a book? And I thought, no, I don't mind writing. I certainly have published many, many blog posts and that sort of thing, but a whole book, who am I to write a
Yeah.
book? And it turns out, with a formula, I did have things to share, and it was a way to get a message out to, certainly a broader audience than one-on-one consulting or coaching could do. And it was an affordable way for people to get some easy to implement strategies. So I really liked the idea. And I think
Hmm.
what drew me to it and made me believe I could do it was because it was this formula. And that was this, part of the series.
Yeah. So could you elaborate on the formula?
Yeah, yeah. So there's a series, it's called 6 word lesson books. And the 6 word lessons concept was, I think it was Ernest Hemingway who had a quote or a story. He told a story in 6 words only. And it was something about, a baby and shoes. And I don't remember the specifics. It's in the front of each of the books. So we could take a look. But this idea that you could tell a story or share a message in a concise, formulaic way, like I said, that appealed to me. I'm like, okay, well, that's a challenge to
Yeah.
say, what do I want to say and how can I do it in 6 words? So
Hmm.
the formula to this book was to write 100 6 word lessons. So my book is 6 word lessons to be more productive. And I
Hmm.
cover a variety of subtopics to productivity, but each chapter is titled with a 6 word title. And then each of the 100 lessons is 6 words. And then you get a couple of paragraphs to kind of
Yeah.
teach the lesson or share the strategy.
Yeah, I was just browsing through your book in Amazon, and I think I've already read half of it because it's so simple and easy to understand.
Yeah,
And you don't have to read it in any particular order. You could just open any page and get a
I
lesson
agree.
from that and immediately implement that. And what I
Yeah,
love about it is, Debbie, you did not, you and the publishers, you guys did not follow the usual like rules of writing a book, right?
yeah,
That you need to
yeah,
have so many words and long chapters with long paragraphs and all of those complexities. You broke the rules and you decided to
yeah,
come up with something that's so simple. And that's
yeah.
really commendable because it's always difficult to create a new trend. And you guys
Yeah.
did that.
Well, and it was, I mean, again, what drew me to this is that the simplicity was a theme in my business, and I was teaching it, right? I was
Mm.
helping clients simplify their lives. One thing that I saw time and time again with the organizing clients that I had was that many of them had bookshelves full of books on how to get and stay organized. And I thought, well, that's interesting. They have all these books, but yet they're still hiring a company to help them do the work. And so I thought about why that was. And most of these books were big, thick books.
So they
And
wouldn't
if
have
you
even
think
read
about it,
it.
They hadn't read them because they were overwhelmed, right? And
Yeah.
that's a common theme of clients that I serve is they come to me and they're overwhelmed by all the things that they have to do and want to do, right?
Mm,
So if you think about it, these big books, while I'm sure full of fantastic content, weren't practical enough, weren't brief enough to attract the reader in these situations. And so then they weren't helping. So
yeah.
I wanted, if I was going to write a book, I wanted it to be something that was easy to pick up, where you could, you could do a lesson a day and then focus on that one thing for that day, implement it, and really start to build some new habits that it would get used, not set on a shelf.
Right. Absolutely. The only doubt I have about the book, Debbie, is that for the reader is absolutely easy to read. But while you were writing that book and you were asked to come up with 100 lessons, did you ever wonder, how can I possibly come up with 100 things? Because 100 looks like a big number. Did that
Yeah.
overwhelm you?
It The way that I reduce the overwhelm is the same way I would have coached a client. So you take something big and it's overwhelming, you figure out, how can I break this down, right? How can I take it in steps or in
Mm,
chunks? So if you think about it, 100 lessons, I started with brainstorming what I would write about. So I kind of created the chapters, so to speak, first.
mm.
And I used 3x5 cards. And I knew I would need to create more than 100 because they might not all be a right fit, right? Or
Yeah,
maybe I had 100 ideas of things to share, but I couldn't come up with 6 words for each of them.
right.
And so if it didn't fit the formula, I couldn't use it. So I actually had to think of more than 100 things. But
Mm,
if you take an expertise that you have and you really break it down into the smallest parts, that any one of them, by itself isn't overwhelming, it's not so bad. And so that was
yeah.
part of, breaking down the strategy and how I was going to write it, and then the timing as well. And I didn't try and do it in one sitting, certainly. So that helped a lot.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that, Debbie. I highly recommend our listeners and viewers to go check out your book and get some inspiration from there, because they don't have to complicate things. They can come up with tips and lessons from their own life. I'm
Yeah.
sure if
Yeah.
you sit down, you can come up with
Yeah.
enough number of tips to actually convert that into a book.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
oh, you have it right there.
I have it
Wonderful.
right here, and I just kind of want to show it is not a overwhelming book.
Yeah, it's
And
not
this is kind
500
of what,
pages.
you can
Yeah.
open up a, that's funny, the one that I open up to, go topless. No, not that kind. It's talking about, this was a, how to have more effective meetings and to be off
Awesome.
your device. But, it's not a complicated book. For somebody who's struggling with being more organized, being more productive, they really
Mm,
can, just open it up in the middle. You don't have to start from the beginning. There are chapters that have themes. So if you want to approach, email organization or physical organization or time management, you certainly can focus on a chapter at a time,
yeah.
but it's not difficult.
Awesome. I love how you have these broader themes under which you chose smaller lessons, so that
Yeah.
makes it easier for the mind to put it into buckets. Right.
You. Oh, I was just going to say one other thing, and I know this, listeners may certainly know about the services that you offer. But I will say that one of the things that took away the overwhelm for me
Mm,
also in writing a book is that I wasn't in it alone.
yeah.
So when I was approached by the couple that have this publishing company, and they, asked if I would want to be a part, I knew I had their support and their help.
Mm,
So what the process that I went through, I would call it guided publishing, in that they got the ISBN number, they helped with the cover design, they edited, and so knowing that I had help, and
yeah.
that might be something that, if somebody's on the fence about writing a book, to realize that you don't have to do it all yourself. There's any number of ways that you can get help, from having the whole thing ghost written, or
Yeah.
somebody writing it on your behalf, or I think angel written, is a term, that an angel
Yeah.
writer is a term that you use. So I want to share that, and this is true for anything that, as the productivity consultant hat, when you're overwhelmed, figuring out, how could I get some help with this, how
Mm,
do I not have to do this alone,
yeah.
was a big part in my eventually publishing book.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing this, Debbie. because most people struggle with the idea that they have to do all of this alone. I
Right.
feel that as long as you have the intention to share your expertise with the world, that's
Yep.
the only qualification you need. You don't have to
Yep.
be a cover
Yep.
designer, you don't have to be
Yep.
an editor,
No.
you don't have to be
Right.
any of that. You just need to
Right.
have the intention to serve your readers. So, yeah.
For sure. For sure.
So, once you published the book, Debbie,
Mhm.
how were you using it? Were you giving these books to your clients, or did you get some clients through the book? How did the book help you in return?
I don't know if I've directly gotten any clients from the book itself, but
Hmm.
it is a marketing tool for me. So, in today's day, brochures are not very relevant.
Yeah.
Business cards are even hardly used with as much as, we connect online and, network in a very different way. But to have a book, I think that it has helped me with credibility. So, to have my thoughts in writing and a book with my name on it, and to be able to say I'm an author,
Hmm.
the little bio on the back, looks very official. It is official, right? So
Yeah.
that helps with some confidence. It helps with some credibility. I did, and I have used the book. Certainly, I mean, it's available on Amazon and all kinds of platforms, both physical and e and audio
Hmm.
platforms. But um, I have used it. I've given it as gifts,
Yeah.
or if I, sometimes I sign up a new coaching client, and for what they're investing, I'd like to send them a book or make the book
Yeah.
available to them. So I do that in cases. Other times, way back when I was teaching workshops,
Hmm.
sometimes I would purchase and share somebody else's book or workbook in that workshop, and I transitioned to, of course, using mine.
Right.
So I could kind of upsell if I was selling a training to a company, to say, and you can purchase a copy of my book for every participant. And I did have
Yeah.
organizations that did that, and that was really cool to walk in a room. There's one conference in particular where I was hired to be a speaker, and they did purchase 300 copies of the book, and I walk into this room and there's my books all across the
Wow.
tables, and that was really neat to see. So it has been, a little bit of a moneymaker, but it's not why I wrote the book. And I certainly am not
Yeah.
going to retire off of just book sales.
Yeah.
But to use it instead of using somebody else's material and purchasing that,
Mhm.
that's been really nice too.
Yeah, I think that makes a huge difference. As you rightly said, not all the authors make money by selling millions of copies of their book,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
even if you could land one big corporate client who might
Right,
have not even read your book, but has just flipped through it and their perception about you has changed,
right.
that can make a lot of difference. I remember the story that my husband told me once when he launched his book. He was also just giving it to a lot of people, and he went to an event where he met a celebrity, and
Mm,
he walked up to him, whom he would have otherwise never had the confidence to just walk up, but he gave a copy of his book. And that guy said, "Hey,
yes.
thank you so much. I don't read books, but I'll anyway keep it." And
Ah,
a couple of hours later, he calls back my husband because he kept his contact information inside the book. And he said,
yep.
my husband is a relationship coach. So he said, what? I think your book looks good. I can't read it, but I want to work with you to fix my marriage. And that was
Wow.
amazing because
Yeah,
a person who has not even read your book still believes that you are the expert by just seeing the
that's
book.
right. That's right. And that's that credibility factor I think I was talking about. I mean, there may be a lot of people in any certain profession who, I mean, most of them will not publish a book, right?
Yeah,
So it can help you stand apart a little bit or be a differentiator. And in that case, that's such a great story. It can be a door opener.
so true. Now let's talk about your next book. This
Sure.
is an anthology, right? It's a collaborative effort. So how did that
Yes.
happen?
Yes. So the next book I wrote, and I'll show you the book so you can kind of understand. It's One Habit for a Thriving Home Office, and this was written during the pandemic.
Mhm.
So we know, and we're certainly not out of it yet, but
Yeah.
our world changed in early 2020,
Mhm.
March of 2020 specifically, when we have this global pandemic, and all over the world, people that had been working in traditional offices were sent home and
Yeah.
quarantining and, in lockdown situations and trying to be productive from home.
Mm.
And certainly some people had done that before or done it some of the time, but many had really never worked in a home office or home environment.
Yeah. They were
And
doing it for
so
the first time.
exactly. So the time seemed really right. And again, I was approached by somebody who said, "Hey, I have an idea. I have this series, this One Habits series, where it's a collection of one habit that any author would write about or
Mm.
suggest to do something." And in our case, it was one habit to have a thriving home office. And he said, "Would you be interested in co-authoring this with me?"
Right.
So I thought about it, and one of the responsibilities in co-authoring was to invite and curate, authors to contribute. And so I thought about, do I know enough people, and figured that in the years of experience, because this is now 2020, I'd been in
Mm.
business for quite some time. I had and have a great large network, and so I thought, I think I know enough people who would have something to say about this and
Right.
might like to be an author in a book. So
Right.
invited contributing authors, and this book now is out. We published it in July of 2020, so we
Yeah.
had to
Very
bring it together
timely.
yeah, quickly, but that was why.
Mm.
And each author that submitted a chapter gets to say now that they're a part of a best-selling book, that they're a best-selling author, because in some categories on Amazon, we went to best-selling status quickly. So, same thing. This is not going to be something that I'll retire on, but the opportunity, I love collaboration and the opportunity to help others become an author, many of
Mm.
them for the first time, and provide that platform for them. And then
Yeah.
same thing, this co-author really did the legwork of the ISBN number and getting it on the various platforms. And I just wrote, I just wrote and coordinated, I guess,
Yeah.
some of the other contributors.
Amazing. I'm really happy about this initiative that you took, Debbie. I just wanted to understand your mindset because I have seen some authors feel that they are the expert in a particular niche and they want to have the limelight. So you could have told your friend that, hey, I know enough number of habits that I can write an entire book on working from home. But
Yeah.
instead, you chose to be a collaborator and bring in other people to also voice their opinion. So, what were you thinking at that time about this project?
I think it's just one of my core values, the connection, relationships, collaboration. I don't want to do business alone, right? And so involving other people and others' perspectives, even if I consider myself an expert, I am definitely not the expert or the only expert. And limelight has never, ever been important to me. That's not a motivating factor for me. So I think for those reasons, this seemed like a really good way,
Yeah,
again, to publish a book, which by itself might feel overwhelming to anyone.
yeah.
Where back to that theme of I wasn't doing it alone. I
Mm.
wasn't in it alone, and it wasn't important to me to be the voice. I
Yeah,
think this book is rich because of the diversity of voices and the
mm,
diversity of authors and thoughts.
yeah,
And I love that. That makes me really happy.
awesome. And did I'm sure some of the authors might who were a part of this book might not have written a book before. So, did
Mhm.
you have to help them overcome that fear of writing?
Yes, and same thing as the idea that, hey, you're not in this alone. I'm happy to help you
Mm.
brainstorm on your topic. I'm happy to help give you an example of what a chapter looks like. There was a formula to follow, not as structured as the 6-word lessons book, but there was a suggested formula, and then I edited every single contribution. So that knowing that it didn't have to be perfect, and one of my productivity mantras I love sharing with people is that done is better than perfect. Like, let's just get a draft in.
Yeah.
And that took the pressure off, I think, for some people who were
Mm.
reluctant, to have kind of some coaching along the way.
Right.
That was part of the process.
Awesome. And do you also have a process to make sure that no two authors were talking about the same habit or something like that?
Yes. So that was just, keeping myself organized, and we had a
Yeah.
spreadsheet of who was the author, what was their topic. So they
Mm,
committed to a topic, and once they did, that was their topic. So then
yeah.
if somebody else said, "Hey, I think I want to write about," I could say, "You know what? We've got that covered. Could you put a spin on it, or could you twist it,
Mm,
or could you come up with something different?" Again, I
yeah.
was able to help brainstorm or think about a different angle.
Mm,
There might be one or two things where the topic really is aligned, but two very different perspectives.
yeah.
And they're not necessarily negating what the other's saying, but they have a different take on a similar topic, and that was totally okay.
Yeah, great. And I think this is also an opportunity for all the contributors to also network with each other and
Mhm.
build new relationships.
Yeah. We had a Facebook page for the contributors. When it came time to launch the book, we had some collaborative efforts and live
Mm,
streaming interviews, and a variety of things where they did get to see or interact with each other as well.
yeah, this is really wonderful. I think this is also a message to all those people who have an expertise but are too busy to write an entire full length, solo book, but they could just use their own existing network to announce an upcoming book and bring together people to contribute chapters and thereby also establish their expertise by contributing their bit to the book.
I think with the ease of self-publishing and the
Mm,
variety of ways that you can do that these days, the barriers to becoming an author are very few, right?
yeah,
And they're usually up here.
so true.
So whereas before self-publishing, you had to have an idea, you had to pitch it, you had to have somebody else agree that it was a probably money making idea and that they would be
Yeah.
able to sell books. And so agent, or you had to have something basically pre-approved. Maybe you got an advance, maybe you didn't, but somebody else was really in charge of whether or not this book came to be. And I think
Mm,
those of us that choose to self-publish have a lot more options and fewer barriers. And again, I know
yeah.
that's something that your company really helps people with, is just making it easier, right? I'm not going to say it's easy. It's not necessarily easy, but
Yeah.
people have a choice to just focus on, like I wanted to do. Especially with
Mm,
the first book, I just wanted to share the content. I just wanted to write. I didn't want to
yeah.
worry about, what did I need for a table of contents and how would that be
Yeah.
formatted? And I didn't want to worry about all that.
So true. And just like no two entrepreneurs are the same, no two authors are the same. Each of us have different personalities and different ways of working. So I think based on what feels right to you, there is always a way. If you don't want to write it at all, if that's not comfortable, you can work with a writer who can support you. If you need
Sure.
accountability and coaching, you can work with a coach. Or if you like to do everything independently, then do what is in your zone of genius and outsource the rest. So I think there are a million ways to make this work. And you are such a
Yes.
shining example, Debbie, with two beautiful books that are so simple to read and yet so valuable. So, Debbie, what would be your final word of advice to all those aspiring authors out there who know that they have the knowledge inside of them to share, but they're not taking the right steps?
It's really the advice that I share with all of my clients, no matter what their goal, to make it a priority. So choose that this is a priority for you and commit to
Mm,
it. Create a plan. So prioritize, plan, and produce. That's kind of the formula that I work with clients on, but make a
yeah.
plan. So break things down. How are you going to do this? What kind of time do you need to dedicate to it? And where will you're not going to find the time. Where will you make the time? And then what do you want to delegate or outsource? What help can you enlist?
Yeah.
And then to produce consistently with less stress, there's productivity strategies that you can employ, one of which is to have accountability in some form or fashion.
Mm,
Even if that's just sharing with a colleague or a spouse or whomever, hey, I have this project, I'm committing to it, but I want to
mm,
share it with you because I'd like to have you hold me accountable. Will you check in with me now and then?
yeah.
That's just an example of something that someone could do to take their idea and execute, because
Mm.
it's not and it might not be a straight line, right? It might be a little bit like this,
Yeah.
but prioritize it, plan it out, and then produce it.
Yeah, very well said, Debbie. I just have one question regarding prioritizing.
Hmm,
When it comes to entrepreneurs, whom I always keep telling that, hey, you should be writing a book, what I notice is usually they have some five important projects that they should have done like last year but have not been doing. But when they have to
yeah,
pick one, they end up picking the one that will give them instant return on investment, like
mm,
launching an online course or their next webinar. And that's why the book project always becomes the last priority.
right.
So why should people pause the other things and actually work on their book now?
Yeah. I think it's being able to tie the results that they want, publishing a book, to something that they hold very important. So I talk to clients about values-based planning. So it's like
Mm,
a triangle. At the top of the triangle are your values, the things that you hold to be most important. And then from the values, you have objectives, and then goals, and then projects, and then the to-dos, the things that end up on our
right.
calendar or our task list. And I agree. I think somebody will procrastinate or choose other priorities if they don't see the tie in to a value. So, whether
Mm,
that's to get their message out in a broad way, whether it's to market their business, they have to think about, why do I want to write a book?
yeah.
What would I accomplish by doing that? And then that why needs to be compelling enough to make it a priority.
Mm,
And it doesn't have to be either I'm going to do things that can generate revenue today, or I'm going to write a book. I mean, you can do both,
yeah.
but you can't do 10 things all at the same time really well, right?
Mm,
And there's that quote, you can't do it all. Well, you can do it all, just not at the same time. So it
mm,
might be that this is or isn't a season to write a book.
yeah.
And if you decide that it is, you have to have that compelling why and
Mm,
follow through. Um, I also think that the idea that it doesn't have to take over your life, you can
yeah.
do that and still do generate a revenue generating activity in your business,
Mm,
as long as you have a plan, right? We can compartmentalize and say, I'm going to do my writing in the morning between 9 and noon, and
mm,
between noon and 5 I'm going to see clients and I'm going to do other
yeah.
activity that generates revenue. So that plan, the
Yeah.
compelling why and the plan, both really important.
Wow. I love the importance of understanding the why and tying it with your values. And
Yeah,
also the fact that your life doesn't have to pause just because you're writing a
yeah,
book. You
right,
can still travel, you can still
right.
have time for your kids and everything else.
Yes,
Great.
but our time is limited. So the way
Yeah.
that we choose to spend our time, we have to see
Mm,
value or return on investment. I mean, that's a term that's used a lot. Otherwise, you're not so likely to do it. And return on investment, by the way, doesn't have to be money, right? We've just talked
yeah.
about. I'm not going to retire off of
Yeah.
any royalties on either of these
Exactly.
books, but there's a different return on investment that I get or received from being a
Mm,
part of these projects.
yeah, absolutely. So where can people find out more about you and your work, Debbie?
Yeah, so Googling the business is one way. So my business is Simply Placed, and the website is itssimplyplaced.com. And I'll send you a couple things that if you use show notes, you can include in the show notes.
Sure.
So look below.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I think I on various social media platforms, LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook, if you type in Simply Place or Debbie Rosemont, I'll pop up. And I love to have a conversation and connection. So I do encourage listeners, if you have a question about something I've said, or you just want to learn more about productivity consulting, coaching, and training, please do reach out.
Amazing. I'm going to have all the links right below in the show notes. Thank you once again, Debbie, for coming on Author Success Show.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me as your guest today.